What I'm hearing from you is if you pay attention to the signs that you're seeing, you don't let yourself be in a position where you're taken advantage of.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying know your partner better than they know themselves. So the moment they start changing, you spot it quicker than they can.
Being
and
together.
chemistry, yeah, it's difficult. Chemistry is how much you're enjoying the person's company. You can have great chemistry with everybody. Psychological intimacy is how much you're similar in your goals and values. So how similar, I can enjoy the company of somebody really easily. No, it's not a problem. But you might realize that they're still partying a lot. Maybe they're still on drugs. Maybe they're doing that. But psychological intimacy is, do we have the same vision of where we see ourselves in 5, 6, 10 years time? And are we both aligned in the values that will take us there? And if we've got an alignment, you're probably quite intimate. If you haven't got an alignment, you can enjoy them, but chances are it won't be a long-lasting relationship. It's most cheaters come with smoking guns on the first date. There's always some signal that their behavior was not transparent. And whenever you catch them cheating, usually it's, they say, I always knew because from day one they were like this. And I always say people usually don't lie. They might say lies, but they show you their red flags pretty much from day one. It's a big factor. And I know we like to think that people cheat simply because they're narcissists. And simply because they're like that. There are some men that come that way. There are some men that genuinely, no matter who they're with, no matter what the relationship is, they're too broken to be faithful. They feel uncomfortable being faithful. They're going to cheat on everyone. But a lot of the time, they are deprived of intimacy. Yeah, either because they just didn't choose a woman that was attracted to them to begin with, or they ruin the intimacy by inviting too much pornography or alternatives into the relationship, and now they've got no intimacy left with their partner. But when they do lose the intimacy, they lose the motivation to be loyal. They think they're more likely to be loyal to a woman that gives them good intimacy than a woman that gives them a good life, because they think why their motivation to be loyal decreases as their sexual intimacy dies in their relationship. So they're more likely to be open to it. So I always tell people, try and guard your marriage by embedding the intimacy in it as regularly as you can.
No, I think you've hit the core root things that people are looking for, and how they show up is always different.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's why I was saying earlier, it feels like you've hit the core at the root of what's needed.
Trying to.
I don't think you've missed anything. I'm just sitting with it. But I think anything that I would say are only things that are part of those. Like, for example, the loyalty piece includes respect.
Yeah.
Like both people are looking for respect. I think that the loyalty piece includes like they believe in your goals and you believe in theirs. Like there's root causes.
And I think sometimes as women, we can remove the labor part, hoping that he will think that we're so low maintenance, he won't put any investment in us, we'll be so easy. We become the hookup girl. So what I mean by that is if we remove his ability to put labor into us, we don't say to him like, let's go on dates. We don't say like, look, when are we getting married? There's no emotion. We don't burden him with any problems. And we think, no, well, let's just be cool. We think that being cool will eventually he'll lead to us commitment and he'll become loyal to us. Actually, he has to put the labor in order for us to see it as something worth being loyal to. So if we deprive them of that, we actually are enhancing the chances of us just being a hookup short-term fling.
Yeah, that's how you avoid being the fling.
Avoid being the fling. It's making it so easy for them. And I know it's so tempting because sometimes you're thinking he's such a lovely guy, really attracted to him. And if I insist on a few dates or if I insist on like maybe going away together, maybe I'll lose him. But you'll only lose people who are not willing to invest in you anyway. So unfortunately, being too easy, it can work. I'm not saying it never works, but at the same time, it doesn't motivate them in any way, shape or form to actually make this serious because they've got it so easy.
What's the difference between the woman a man dates and the woman a man marries?
I would say the key difference is the element of stability and responsibility. And what I mean by that is being with a man who is super social, who's a big drinker and has got all these friends and busy all day, every day, and got this amazing life is great for dates. You get to go on great vacations with him. You get to go to nice restaurants and so on and so forth. But when it comes to getting married, if you don't look for a man with a lot of self-control, you will really suffer. And what I mean by this is that he needs to have self-control in terms of his sexual discipline. He needs self-control in terms of what he puts into his body, even the food he eats, everything, and he needs self-control when it comes to his money. If in those areas he's got no self-control, for dating, no problem. It doesn't matter. Yeah, he can be sexually wild, he can spend all his money, no problem. You can enjoy a great life. When you marry a man like that, every day is anxiety. Every single day is anxiety because his lack of self-control will lead to a lack of self-respect. And as a result, he'll have such low self-esteem that you can't trust him to make decisions. But men with lots of self-control, you can trust that they make great decisions. You can trust their judgment and you can finally start a family or start your goals. But you can't do that with men who have got no self-control.
Do you know what the amazing thing is? That as I was listening to you, I was thinking about like men don't learn that anywhere.
No, they don't.
It's so hard. Like if I never lived as a monk, I wouldn't have any sense
What was
control.
your biggest lesson of living with monks?
I mean, a big part of it is sense control. Like you eat what you're given. You're celibate while you're there. There's complete focus and determination on the path. And so there were so many amazing mental mastery tools that I gained in terms of discipline and organization that I don't know where else I would have learned them.
Can you excel as a man without self-control, do you think?
I don't think so.
It's an impossibility, isn't it?
Yeah. No, that's why I love what you're saying. So I just feel bad because I can't think of...
It's the opposite that actually. Men are being told that be with as many women as you can. Have zero sexual discipline. And, you can kind of eat whatever and there's always Ozempic, so don't worry about it. Or we're actually being told to reduce our self-control and replace it with hedonism. Follow your impulses. And you only live once. Just do it. That kind of mentality when it comes to drinking, when it comes to food, when it comes to money, just spend, all these things. Unfortunately, we're pushing men into a slow and steady depression because we're reducing the importance of self-control and replacing it with self-indulgence. And that is a slow suicide for a man. He will only start to respect himself when he can control himself. And only when he can control himself, he can then excel. And if you pick a man who can't control himself, you'll spend the rest of your life trying to control him, and it will bring out the worst side of you. You'll become a mother to a child you'd never wanted to adopt.
Wow. That mic drop. That's so powerful. It's as I'm listening to you, I'm just sitting here thinking how much there is a need in helping men realize that mental mastery, sense control, discipline are what's going to find the right person. But I think the problem is men also believe that if they're the life of the party, if they're the big spender, if they're the big guy at the party, that's what's going to attract the right person.
It will attract a chaotic person. There are women, lots of women that will like that. There are lots and lots of women that will like that you're a big spender, you're spending on bottles, you're going drinking all night, and you're the life and soul of the party. But it will attract women who want a fast lifestyle and probably don't want to invest in you. They're probably not going to be there when you're suffering and you're on a downward spiral. My reason I'm so strict on men when it comes to self-discipline and sexual discipline in particular is we live in a time where men don't really get a say in when a baby is born. It's not really up to them if that child stays or not. Women have the right. I don't know what it's like in America, but usually we get to control if we want to keep the baby or don't want to keep the baby. And as a result, we get some autonomy. If it's the wrong man, perfect. We don't have to suffer the consequences. But with men, if you get the wrong person and you don't have a good relationship and then you bring children into that mix, you create a generation of broken children. And you are more responsible for that. Yeah, because you have to be more careful than women do because we still have autonomy. We can get rid of a child if we need to. You can't really have that much say in it. So you have to be so disciplined with who you are laying down with. And if I know men who've ruined their families just because they couldn't control themselves sexually, or just because they couldn't have that right conversation with their wife and say, look, I'm missing the intimacy. Maybe we should just part. Instead, they just light a flame into their own home and then suffer the consequences. So sexual discipline is a really, really important one for men, followed by financial discipline. And then, of course, in terms of your food and your health and stuff like that, I think is really important.
What's your take on women sleeping with men too early?
I think it's really difficult for women because a lot of women do want to preserve themselves. They don't want to jump into sleeping with men so early. But what they're finding in this day and age is if they don't lead with that, the men don't even want to know them anymore. Men have no longer wanted to invest in getting to know them psychologically or anything like that. So they're almost stuck between, am I just going to stay lonely forever? Or do I end up just sleeping with men who I'm not even that keen on, but have to stay in the game? So they are really stuck. But what I would say is try not to accelerate your physical intimacy above the psychological intimacy. You can sleep with them that same day, but if you've really had strong psychological intimacy, you know where you two are going, you are in a good place with each other, do whatever you want. But if you don't have that, all the sex will do is enhance your own insecurities, enhance your own anxieties about the relationship, and then it will leave you dampened into the dating market when you go back into it, and negativity with the new man and the new man. So it just lowers your own self-esteem. So try and accelerate the psychological intimacy first.
How would you define psychological intimacy versus like we're just excited by being together.
Chemistry, yeah, it's difficult. Chemistry is how much you're enjoying the person's company. You can have great chemistry with everybody. Psychological intimacy is how much you're similar in your goals and values. So how similar, I can enjoy the company of somebody really easily. No, it's not a problem. But you might realize that they're still partying a lot. Maybe they're still on drugs. Maybe they're doing that. But psychological intimacy is, do we have the same vision of where we see ourselves in 5, 6, 10 years time? And are we both aligned in the values that will take us there? And if we've got an alignment, you're probably quite intimate. If you haven't got an alignment, you can enjoy them, but chances are it won't be a long-lasting relationship.
I like the idea that physical intimacy should follow the pace of psychological intimacy, because then there's actual closeness.
Yeah.
And you're not using physical closeness as a substitute for actually having a deeper, meaningful connection.
And a lot of people do that. Sometimes they got with somebody, they're so physically intimate, and then they're discovering things that they have nothing in common with each other. But because they've now slept together, they're kind of prolonging this relationship longer than it needs to. It's almost like dragging a dead horse. So if they can accelerate, and I know it's difficult because it's hard competing with men that push for it. Or we're living in a world where men will ask for pictures straight away and stuff like that. So it's hard for the woman that is, and I always say this, it's really difficult for the woman with good intentions to find a man in this day and age. The woman that's not prepared to lead sexually and lead with that, she finds herself being overlooked by the women that are. And so, and a bit like some men, then maybe they don't want to lead with finances, but they find themselves being overlooked. So the people who are actually going into relationships with the correct intentions are finding it the most difficult.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
It's so hard for them.
And you shouldn't lower your standards.
You shouldn't, but I can see why people do. I don't want to be judgmental because I can completely understand. I don't know what it's like to be single in this day and age. And I can imagine at some point you're just like, if I keep having these high standards, I'm never going to meet somebody. What I would say is keep your intrinsic standards high and your extrinsic ones low. And what I mean by that is keep your standards of how you like to be treated emotionally really high. Do you like text back? Do you like labels? Do you like regular dates? Keep that high. Or regular time together. Doesn't even have to be dates. Keep that high, but keep your extrinsic values. Like, does he take me on holidays? Is he going to buy me this? Is he sent me flowers? Keep those low. They're not relevant in the long run.
Everything you're saying is, in my opinion, is spot on. It's such great advice, and I really hope everyone who's listening is taking notes because there's so much that you're sharing that I think you're so clear in your approach. I think it's really practical. I think it will connect. But I've heard you say before that if someone cheats on you, it's partly your fault.
I do say that.
And I wanted to hear your take on that, to understand that.
Yeah, I know that sounds terrible. And I say this particularly with, men especially. I'm like, it's always your own fault. And the reason I say that is most cheaters come with smoking guns on the first date. There's always some signal that their behavior was not transparent. And whenever you catch them cheating, usually they say, I always knew because from day one they were like this. And I always say people usually don't lie. They might say lies, but they show you their red flags pretty much from day one. And it might have been that they were in a relationship when you met them, or it might have been that you caught them in a few lies when you first got with them. You would have caught some signs that this person is capable of deeper lies. And I'm not saying you should always look for the bad, but when we keep ignoring poor behavior, what ends up happening is we are becoming distant from the truth. We are going into denial. I actually don't have a problem. Even if your partner is cheating, no problem. You have to have radical relationship with the truth. And there are some women out there that are mistresses. They're so happy in that role because they know the truth. They know that he goes there, spends time with his wife, I'll see him when I see him. Truth is really important. So the more you align yourself with truth, the more you won't actually get blindsided. But when you start missing red flags again and again, you haven't been intimate in months, somebody's not coming home on time, nothing's adding up, and you keep making excuses. Unfortunately, we create the environment for these types of people to flourish. It's almost better that you protect your own home and protect your own sanity. It doesn't mean you become accusatory, but you know that your treatment is not what you appreciate. And if they continue like that, they don't have to cheat. The behavior is enough for you to start setting a boundary. And the behaviors, you don't need, because some cheaters will say, well, you can't prove anything. Cheaters will always want you to catch them red-handed. You as the person should say, I don't need red-handed evidence. I can see your behavior is not treating me rightly. Stop them there before they get to the point where they're disrespecting you more and more.
that's where the gaslighting comes in.
Yeah,
right?
that's like where the gaslighting is.
Yeah, people get gaslit.
They do get gaslighted really heavily. And this is, even as a psychologist, and when I'm as a therapist, and this is where I have to be a lot more empathetic, because I've had clients there that were like, she keeps accusing me. And they're so like convincing that I'm like, you need to stop accusing him. I don't. And then she'll say to me afterwards, I found out he was having an affair the whole time. So the gaslighting is very, very real. But the feeling they give you is always true. So they'll lie to you. Their words, their lips will be low, but your feeling, that gut instinct that something's not right or they're lying to you, try and pay attention to that. And even if you never get evidence, that feeling is partly your partner's responsibility to help soothe those anxieties, not make them worse. So if you have that feeling and they're just like, babe, like whatever you need, like to make you feel better, I have no problem. I've got nothing to hide. But if they get less and less transparent, try and pay attention to that.
What I'm hearing from you is, if you pay attention to the signs that you're seeing, you don't let yourself be in a position where you're taken advantage of.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying know your partner better than they know themselves. So the moment they start changing, you spot it quicker than they can. And I'm sure you have this with Radhi, where you probably know her so well that it would be difficult for her to have a double life without you. You'd know her behaviors, the way she moves, how she talks, how she kisses you, everything. You pay close attention. When you pay so much attention to your partner, it's quite difficult for them to live a whole double life without you catching on. So try and stay attuned as much as you can.
Yeah, every relationship has a rhythm, it has a pattern.
Yeah.
And when the pattern's off, you check in. I think one of the things I see in relationships struggling, especially as they get longer term, is we don't recommit. So life changes, right? Me and Radhi had a dating life. When we got married, we had to recommit to a different way of living. When we got married, then we lived in New York. We had to recommit to a different way of living. We moved to LA, different way of living. It's almost like I've dated so many different people in Radhi, as in she's evolved, she's changed, and same back at me probably to some degree. But I think we don't like it when our partner changes.
Yeah.
And we almost want them to stay the same. Or I've heard maybe you say before that we almost want the guy wants the woman to never change.
Yeah.
And the woman wants the man to change.
Yeah, that's
right?
the problem. One thing I say is that some men are committed to their marriage. And what that means is they're committed to that woman. As she changes, as they changes, they commit to each other. They're loyal to the person that they married, and they will stay loyal forever. Some men are just loyal to the woman they fell in love with. As long as she stays exactly like the person they met, they'll stay loyal. When she starts to change, they'll get more and more disloyal because they don't accept change. You just have to decide what type of person are you. Are you deciding to commit to the marriage? And actually what that means is following them through their evolution, getting to know them at every stage and staying loyal throughout it. But if you're somebody who's just committing to the person you fell in love with, the moment that person starts to change, which they inevitably will, your eyes will start to wander. So it might be good to have that conversation with each other. Which one are we? And can we try and shift to being loyal to the marriage rather than just each other, so that we can help each other evolve and remain consistent while we do change?
What can a woman do to make sure a man doesn't cheat on her?
Have a willingness to walk away when she's being disrespected. That's all it really takes. When men know that you will always be there for them, you're their ride or die, you accept any kind of disrespect. They've been abusive, you accept it. They've been coming home late, you accept it. They are talking to other people, you accept it. And you always make excuses for them. I know you love him.
What is the 3M method?
This is a program that I'm launching actually very soon. And here what I do is I teach men just 3 factors on how to have really healthy relationships. First one is mastering yourself. You can never have a healthy relationship without a healthy relationship with yourself. Without self-esteem and self-confidence, there is no point dating. Then you have to master women. Now, women speak a completely different language and men believe them. What they say they want and what they unconsciously reward are completely different. And the final thing is mastering relationships, where you understand communication, conflict resolution. How do relationships work? If you come out of a relationship and you had good memories, good years, and beautiful kids, it's not a failure. It's relationships you're coming out of it with lowered self-esteem, broken homes, depression, anxiety. Those are the failures. And that's where I come in with relationship skills.